today, and I'm going to share my screen, my desktop, excuse me. It says share screen and then it says desktop. Okay, whatever. Okay, as you can see, I'm over here at the BISS 1123 website. This is section A, of course. What works for A will work for B. And the first thing we need to do is go ahead and get the Solve It student files. Today we're going to work on access case number 4. So I've got Solve in here as I put into the Control F. That lets me do the search through the page, and then it'll pop down here. And there's the little bit past there. There they are, the Solve It student files. So I'm going to open that up. And Moodle, as usual, is taking its time. There we go. And of course, we're going to scroll down and we're going to get the Solve It Chapter 5 database. All right. We're going to put it on the desktop. And we're going to save ourselves a step today. We're going to rename this. So just once you have it on your desktop, right click and go rename. And we're going to call it Access Case 4. Okay? And I'm doing a little work here. Now I can just call this access case. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this, instead of access, I'm going to call this ACCDB for Access Database Case 4. I've got, I've been downloading these on my computer, so I've got some extra files. It can call yours Access Case 4 or ACCDB Case 4, either one, I don't care. Let's open it up now, and we'll click Enable the Content. Again, this should be on our desktop. And you'll see the table for Cascade Pharmacy. That's the case we're working with. So we're going to open this up, and there's the table. And they have a table with a quarter plus set of transactions that have occurred. And this is the date, the drug code, the drug name, the supplier, the tabs, the milligrams per tab. Now, as you would surmise, if we really wanted to take the time, and I don't see the need to recover this because you can go back in the prior videos and see how we did this. But for example, with the drug code, the drug name, the supplier, and the milligrams per tab, those fields, we could create lookup tables for each of them. So we input the correct data because the drug code is going to be the same. Okay, the drug name will be the same. The supplier is going to be the name, and the milligrams per tab will be the same. And we'll just have 3 lookup tables, and then we just, as you remember, we do the lookup and run the query that generates the drop-down menu. So I'm not going to do that because we've done that. And again, it's already been recorded on the prior videos, so you can take a look. And we don't really need to, we would want to do it for real. Now, let's look in the design of this, because it's always a good idea just to look at the design of the table. And here's the date. It's in the date time. We have drug code, a drug name, a supplier, tabs, and milligram per tab. Now, everything is in order so far with the exception. The date is in a data type, is a date time, drug code. Okay, that makes sense. The drug name, Let's go ahead and make it, we've got it as well. We got supplier, we've got tabs, that's a number, milligrams per tab. Now on this, right under milligrams per tab, let's put the word, let's create a field called transaction and I'm going to abbreviate that trans ID, okay? And I'm going to make that an auto number, and then I'm also going to make it the primary key. We've talked about how to do that. As you saw, I created, put in the field name, I put trans ID, and on the data type, I chose auto number, okay? And that's where it just generates a number 1, 2, so forth, so that every record, every transaction, see, this table is what we call a fact table. It's a list of transactions. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to make sure that every record's unique. And this is part of what we call normalizing data. And so we put in the transaction ID, and it's an auto number. And then I'm also going to do this. I'm going to take my cursor and I'm going to put it there and click on that gray area of the field and move it up in front of date. Okay. And it'll say you want to save, you'll save the field, first save the table, okay. And then we'll go back to the design view. Okay. And it still has that transaction ID over there on the far right. So let's do this. Let's just close the table and then reopen the table, and we should have the transaction ID in its proper place, and we do. So now we have the transaction ID, we have the date, the drug code, the drug name, the supplier, the tabs, and the milligrams per tab. Now, if we wanted to get the dosage, that would be simple. We would just take the number of tabs, that's tablets, times the milligram per tablet. And that would be the dosage for that given transaction. That's not that big of a deal. It's just going to be one by the other. We can generate a query, and we'll do this here in just a little bit. Now, basically, over on page 191, they talk about Cascade Pharmacy, and it tells us that they've updated their system, you know, the usual story we get here. And here at the bottom of page 191, they tell them the government, they got a letter from the government that said they have to track certain types of drugs that the pharmacy sells. And there are 6 classes of drugs: sedatives, analgesics, antihypertensives, diuretics, anti-inflammatories, and antidepressives. Now, also at the top of page 192, they said the government requires Cascade, this pharmacy, to give them a quarterly report of their transactions. The government's tracking what they sell. And what the government's going to do basically is this simple. They're going to see what Cascade reports. You know, then they'll go back to the drug company, the manufacturer, and say, how much did you ship to these people? And if it looks funny to them or something's wrong, they'll come out and they'll do a surprise inventory to see, you know, what's in transit, what's on the floor, what's been sold, and they'll know. And this is how now, look, these big pharmacy chains, or any pharmacy, when you have these doctors, like the celebrity doctors that are over prescribed stuff, there's a guy recently here in Oklahoma City got caught. That's how they catch him. You know, so they track this stuff. Well, there's a chart in 192 that shows you the drug code and the drug class. And there are 6 drugs there that are of interest to the government, the ones the government wants to track. And that's Z3, Z4, Z5, okay, and then F3, okay, and then B3, and then B6. So those are the 6 drug codes, and there's the drug class that they are, okay. And then you also note that with the drug code, you have a drug name, okay. So the drug code tells us what class of drug or category of drug it is, and then the name, of course, that's obvious. Okay. Now, we get some more information about the company and some of the problems they have. They need to track it, and this is all continued on over there in bottom page 192, 193, and so they decided to create a database. Brooks is the name of the protagonist in this case, and now we're ready to come down to the tasks for case 4. They're listed on page 193, and the first is design a query to filter out all the drugs not of interest to state government, print the data sheet. Now what they're saying is, okay, this is the opposite way of saying get everything that the government's interested in. That's all. So let's close this table off, okay? And we're going to click create, and we're going to go to query design, and the show table it pops up there, and we're going to find Cascade case 4. Now, while I'm talking about this for a minute, I'll close this. Remember now, also, we've done this in prior cases and in class, and I think I did 1 or 2 recordings. We would also want to create a form that inputs data into the table. Into the table. So that's another thing about this, that we would want to do if we were doing this for real. Okay, but we're just going to do the bare bones case. As I said before, I'm going to blow through these. As I've said, so I put it out there in Moodle and writing, and I say it in class and say it again here. Okay, the major thing that you need to remember is that this supplements what happens in class. It's not a substitute, okay? Now, we're going to run this report, so we're going to get the transaction ID, and we're going to get the date. We're going to get the drug code and the drug name and the supplier, okay, and the tabs and the milligrams per tab. And just in case, we're going to compute transaction dosage. So we're going to create an expression here, okay, and then but before we do that, let's go ahead and filter out the drugs that are not of interest to the government, or that's the opposite way of saying let's select the ones that are. And so here's an expression, here's a Boolean statement, excuse me, or a bit of a criterion we're going to establish. And this is, we're going to put like F3 or Z5 or Z4 or Z3 or B3 or B6. When we use Boolean or, that's a union. If you use Boolean and, it's an intersection. And so if I put like F3 and Z5, for example, I'll get an empty result set because there's not a single transaction record where it has both drug codes. But if I use or on F3 or Z5, for example, I'd get both. In this case, I want all 6 that the government's interested, so I'm going to control C. All right, and then in here, and under the drug code, I'll squinch this up so you can see a little bit better. Under the drug code on the criteria, which is, it says criteria, that line under drug code. And I'll do that, and there they are. Those are all the drugs that are of interest to the government. Now, just to make this a little easier, I'm going to go ahead and put that in ascending order, and then we'll go back up, and there it is. B3, as you can see, B6, then the Fs, and then the Zs. Now we have one other thing to do over here, and that is to create an expression, and that's going to be the dosage, transaction dosage. So I'm going to create an expression here. I'm going to call it trans dosage. No, pardon me. Dosage, that's the wrong term, but trans dispense. And I'm going to call it trans DISP for trans dispensed. In other words, how much of that drug did we dispense in that transaction? And then I'll put the colon, and that's going to be bracket, okay, and tabs, TABS. Remember, folks, just like we've had these experiences in class, if you don't use the brackets or you don't name the field exactly as you should, you're going to get a parameter error. That's going to be tabs times MG underscore PER underscore tab. So it's going to be tabs times MG underscore per underscore tab. Each of those field names are in brackets. And like I said before, if you don't spell the name of the field correctly or the table, what will happen is it's going to say, it'll give you a parameter error. And what that means is the machine's going to say, look, you've named something I don't know anything about. What is this? Because you're asking me to step outside the parameters of the table I'm working with and the fields in that table that you've selected, or the fields in that table that exist. That's why we call it a parameter error. It's kind of like you're out of bounds, okay? Now, I'm going to come over to that empty field over there and paste that in. And let's run this. And there it is, the transaction dispensed. And that shows us how much of that drug we dispensed for a given transaction. Okay? Now, I've got all of these that are of interest to the government. I've got them in the drug code. And I'm going to save this. As you can hear my dog with, someone's come in here. See, I'm here at home working. And since I'm a little rather casual, I'm not letting you see me today. But you can hear my beautiful voice. Isn't that wonderful? Anyway, this will be case 4, task 1. Okay, case 4, task 1. All right, and I'm going to close this off. Now, they want us to do a report. In task number 2, design and print a report, a summary report to present to the state government each quarter. Include only the total drug usage subject for each of the state's targeted drug codes. It should be sorted by drug code, then by drug name. So let's click Create. And let's click Report Wizard. And I'm going to look for the query, case 4, task 1. And I'm going to get everything over there. Okay? And then I'm going to click Next. And this is the bottom page 193. They want us to by each, sorted by drug code and then by drug name. And to do this on a quarterly report. So first of all, I'm going to click on date. And you see at the top here, it's going to say date by month. Come down here and you see the grouping options. And I'm going to do the date, but by quarter. And when you go back and look at this table, you're going to see they have transactions all the way back to November of the year prior, November 2007, all the way up to sometime, I think, in March or something like that in 2008. So we're just going to do it by the quarter. And what it will do is it will start for that quarter for that year. And you'll see that here. We're going to date it by quarter. And then we're going to group it by drug code. Okay. And that'll be a normal grouping, which would be in ascending order. And let's see, we'll click And then I'm going to also group it by the supplier. And on the supplier, well, I'm going to take the supplier, I'm going to move it back. Let's click next. And we're going to put this in ascending order. By supplier. And then here it says summary options, and this is where it becomes important. We're going to get, and we're going to click summary of tabs, milligrams of tabs, and the transaction dispensed. That is how much we dispensed in that transaction. And notice it says detail and summary. We want that one. Now the authors tried to throw us by saying create a summary report, but if we want subtotals in the report function, we're going to need to do detail and summary. So we click OK. And then we'll click, let's see if we can find the, no, we'll click next. And let's see what a stepped landscape would look like. And as you can see, it's going to show us the different options. And I'm going to do stepped landscape. And that's the title of the report is Case 4 Task 1. I click Finish. And there's the report. Now they wanted this, they're sorted by drug code, then by drug name, and we have that here. We have it the fourth quarter of 2008, okay? And then we have it, and that's the latest quarter that it gives us. And we have that by the drug code. Now let's close the print preview, and on the view, let's go to the layout view, and I'm going to take the supplier and I'm going to move this over some, okay? And then transaction ID, I'm going to move that over. And move it over a bit more. Then on the date, I'm going to move that over. And we're having some work done here, so pardon the noise. Pardon our dust, as they say. But we're going to do it. And the drug name, you can see I'm using the layout to move this all over. And I'll need to move over here a bit, milligrams per tab, and then tabs. And I think this last one will be the trans dispensed. Let's work this out. Yep. And then let's click the report view. You can see there's the summary for each drug, and that's really, and we'll click the layout view. And it says some, And I'm going to click on properties, and for the caption, instead of sum, I'm going to put subtotal. I right-clicked properties on the sum there, and then I came over and on the caption, I'm going to put subtotal. Okay. I did that in the property sheet. You can see this is just so clumsy, but there's the subtotal for each of those drugs. So again, as I've mentioned before, the report function and Access is a booger. It's just nasty to work with, as you can see. The more fields you add, the worse it gets. And you can also go back and experiment with layouts, if you will. You can see what we're working with here. And then I can see the there's the milligrams per tab. I think this belongs over here, if I'm not mistaken. Again, you can see we're just kind of wasting some time here. Actually, we're doing a little bit of work in the format layout of the report function, which is a nasty little critter. Trying to make it look good. There we can see the subtotals. Now, what I'm going to do is click on that, and I'm going to click home. I'll come over here to the far right, and I'll make that bold. The same thing with the one for milligrams per tab. And then I'm going to move that back, and where it says subtotal, I'm going to make that bold, and I'm going to change, I'm going to make that a 12. Each of the drugs, I'm going to make those. Make those a 16, so it's clear what they are. As you can see, it starts to look a little better. Again, it's great. Not much fun messing with this. Intuitively, it's just awful to work with. Now, we're going to come down here to the sum, and I'm going to go ahead and bold that and make that a 12. And then the grand total, I'm going to bold it up. As you can see, I have to come back over here. And bold these numbers. And what I have to do is move this all the way over here to the 688. You can see I would probably want to take these data from the query, and I would probably put them back in Excel, and so I could play with it and make it look prettier or a little bit more obvious. Fortunately for you, you won't be having to mess too much with generating reports. Then on the grand total, you can see I'm going to bold it, and I'll make the grand total 18. Go back up to the report view, and there we are. Let's do the layout view here. And let's calm. I want to get that looking a little better. That looks make that a 12. That'll work. So that does it for us. And so we've done task 2 here in case number 4. Okay. Now we come down to task number 3, and which drug companies produce the drugs he sells under each drug code. Design presents all the quarter's transactions sorted by drug code. Within each drug code, sort alphabetically by supplier, include all appropriate fields. Well, we basically have done that already. Let's go back over here. And now on your navigation page, shutter, come over here and click all access objects, okay? And that'll show us the reports, the queries, the tables. We'll open that up, close the shutter. And that does show us he's under each drug code. The only, yeah, all the towards transactions. So we basically, in number 2, we basically did number 3 also. And we've got the drug name. The one thing, yeah, we've got the drug name and the drug supplier. There we go. So we basically have done that as well. So we'll close that off. And he says, now, Brooks has been frustrated by the slow delivery of supplies by Roche. Okay. And Roche, this is task number 4. The Roche sales rep's coming to visit next week. And they're going to talk about what's going on, why the deliveries are slow, and all that business. And so we're gonna do something here, and we're going to run that query that we had developed, and we're going to copy and paste it. And then we're going to filter out everybody except Roche. And that way we're going to be able to figure out exactly what it is that Roche sells us. Okay? So it's not that big of a deal. There you keep seeing all my Facebook notifications. So I'm going to come over here to the queries, and I'm going to click copy, and then I'm going to click paste. And I'm going to call this case 4, task number 4. Yeah, it's going to be case 4, task 4. Okay. Because remember, when we ran that report, we basically did tasks 2 and 3. Okay. And we'll copy that, and we'll click OK. And then we're going to open it up. And come back down to queries. And we'll open up case 4, task 4. And we're going back to the design view of this query. And what we're going to do is down here under the supplier. And on the supplier, now I want to get everything that Roche sells me. So on this drug code, I want to get rid of it, where I've filtered out that stuff. And that way I'll just have the drug code and the drug names in the drug codes in descending orders. All right. And then under the supplier for the criteria, I'm going to put Roche. I'm going to run the query. All right. And that's everything that Roche sells us. And that's case 4, task 4. So we'll save it. And then we'll close it off. Now, the last thing that we have to do now, as I said before, my voice sounds a little different because I've got from my chair. I'm trying to see how sensitive my mic is to pick me up, how it sounds. So I'm doing a little experimenting here with the sound portion of this. And there at the bottom of page 193, they are going to ask you, and that this is the top of page 194, to create a data flow design. You're going to create a flow chart based upon the verbiage there in page 193 and 194 and filling the prescription. And I want you to go into Word and go into Insert Objects, and you're going to find the flow chart symbols. I have over on Moodle, I have the flow chart symbols for you. Help on understanding what those are all about. I have some resources over there. And I want you to create the data flow diagram. So I'm going to stop the share now. And I'm going to stop the recording, and that will be it. That's access case 4.